Tonight on Reporting Scotland. A row over how much money is coming to Scotland as a result of the budget.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the decisions taken in this budget also mean £2 billion more for the Scottish Government.
But the Scottish Finance Secretary says it comes with strings and calls the announcement a con. Also in the programme. There are growing calls for electric dog training collars to be banned. We're in the French capital as Celtic prepare to take on Paris Saint-Germain, who've yet to lose a goal in this year's Champions League. The Australian rugby team complain about their Edinburgh training pitch ahead of their match on Saturday.
Somebody needs to get a swatch at the ribbons. You need ribbons today now?
The ribbons will not be ready Tuesday, sweetheart.
And the art project inspired by a comedy show. Good evening. The Chancellor Philip Hammond announced in his budget that Scotland will receive an extra £2 billion over the next 4 years. However, the Scottish Government insists that this is cash with strings attached. Well, at Westminster for us this evening is our political correspondent, David Porter.
Jackie, today the Chancellor Philip Hammond has said what he thinks and hopes will lie ahead for the economy. Tonight here at Westminster, people are looking through this in fine detail. It's the so-called Red Book, which continues and has every detail of the budget in it. Philip Hammond says that as a result of his budget, Scotland will get an extra £2 billion and millions of Scots will pay less income tax. His opponents say it's all smoke and mirrors, and it is, as far as Scotland is concerned, it represents a missed opportunity. My colleague Andrew Kerr has been following the day's events here at Westminster.
This budget aimed to secure Britain's future in a post-Brexit world. £3 billion is to be spent on planning for every outcome in a low-growth, low-productivity economy. What a difference a year makes. No majority, no money and still no idea about Brexit. But at least this time round, Philip Hammond has some Scots Tories behind him. Despite the economic gloom in the Commons, the deadpan Chancellor dropped a few jokes here at Labour's expense.
Mr Speaker, if they carry on like that, there'll be plenty of others joining Keisha Dugdale in saying, "I'm Labour, get me out of here."
There's not been much laughter from the SNP though. They knew when they created Police Scotland and a single fire service that they would have to pay VAT. But the party's campaigned to have that overturned. The Chancellor did just that.
My Scottish Conservative colleagues have persuaded me that the Scottish people should not lose out just because of the obstinacy of the SNP government.
The Chancellor also announced a freeze on fuel duty. Alcohol duties frozen too, but cheap white cider's going up. There's a £2 billion spending power increase for Scotland. That's caused a row with the SNP pointing out half of it is money that needs paid back. There's North Sea oil and gas tax relief to help decommissioning. Not enough, say the opposition. Across the chamber, they weren't impressed.
This is a budget that shows the Chancellor is either blind to what is going on or that he's behaving like a frightened rabbit caught in the headlights. Either way, people are going to pay the price for his lack of leadership.
The Scottish Government say they're facing a cut of £240 million. The Conservatives say Scotland's not being shortchanged.
There's money for the city deals in Perth, in Dundee, the one in the Borders, the new innovative Borderlands deal. There's the £40 million coming back for police VAT. There's lots of direct investment, positive investment in Scotland.
Labour were less optimistic.
Low wages and low jobs growth. We've just not got anything really for working families. We've not got anything for hard-pressed working people, and it's a real disappointment and another missed opportunity.
And a looming Brexit concerns the Liberal Democrats.
Well, by 1:30, I was much more worried than I had been at 12:30 when I heard that 3.7 billion's already been set aside and that the forecasts for the economy are getting worse, £45 million worse than it was in March of this year.
The Chancellor was cheered, job done for the Conservatives at least. But as autumn turns, there's widespread concern about a Brexit economic chill. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, Westminster.
One of the announcements in today's budget, many will only affect England and Wales. So how do they translate into decisions north of the border? Here's our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser.
Well, as we've been hearing, budget announcements that will have a particular effect on Scotland include that VAT cut for police and fire services, and also the oil and gas sector is welcoming what should bring a significant boost for older oil and gas fields. The Chancellor wants to make it more attractive to buy them and to keep them producing for longer. He's doing that by letting new owners use old tax allowances to reduce the costs of eventual decommissioning. But at least as significant, the impact Philip Hammond's decisions will have on Scotland's public spending, saying there's another £2 billion in there for Scotland. That seems a big number. Well, what's in it? It's spread over 4 years. Slightly more than half has strings attached for projects for which the money will have to be paid back, such as Help to Buy for housing. Around quarter is in other capital spending, for instance, roads and government buildings. Less than a quarter is for everyday public service spending, much of it on public sector pay. Well, that's a cash boost for Holyrood, but the Scottish Government says after inflation it'll feel like a cut of nearly £300 million. The Scottish ministers could use their tax powers to compensate for that. They've already made income tax bills higher for Scots, earning more than £43,000. That gap could well get wider after today's budget. Indeed, Finance Secretary Derek Mackay has new powers to change tax thresholds, create new tax bands, set different rates. He's got only 3 weeks to prepare for his draft budget for Holyrood.
The First Minister set out in the programme for government our priorities, and they're around education, the economy and the environment as well. But of course it is made more difficult by the Chancellor's budget today in that he's shortchanged Scotland once again.
Well, other challenges knocked onto Scottish ministers arise from the Chancellor's changes to the tax on buying a home south of the border. Will the extra money for the English NHS flow through to the health service in Scotland or go elsewhere? And here's the big message for the whole UK from today's budget. Economic growth is forecast to come in lower than previously thought, meaning tax revenue falls short of past expectations. Now, we'll get an independent forecast next month, the first of its kind, of how that slowdown could feed through to a shortfall in revenue from Holyrood's new tax powers.
Well, Philip's Hammond budget comes ahead of the Scottish budget next month, as we've just heard. Well, I'm joined by our political editor, Brian Taylor. Brian, given what we've heard today, what can we expect from Derek Mackay?
We can extrapolate forward to that budget from Mr Mackay in 3 weeks' time, but we extrapolate it against the background of the statements from the Chancellor to the effect that productivity is struggling and that growth as a consequence of that is going to be very low. In other words, relatively low in comparison with previous years. So a tough period ahead. Against that background, Derek Mackay in the next 3 weeks and going beyond that has three big challenges. One, he has to decide what to do on spending. Yes, he has that extra money to put into capital projects and to put into projects where there are loans. He doesn't have extra money or huge extra money on day-to-day cash. Therefore, that's a tough call. He has to decide what to do on pay. The Scottish ministers have lifted the cap in principle on public sector pay. Everyone heard that, but there was always a caveat attached, and that caveat was that it had to be affordable. It hasn't got any more affordable as a consequence of today's budget, because there is no generic spending budget line that goes directly on pay. There's talk about support for the nurses, but there's no direct one for overall public sector pay. And then he has that big decision on taxation. Yes, the personal allowance is dictated by Westminster, and that allows the Treasury to say that they're exempting people from tax at the lower end, but all the rates and bands are set by Holyrood. The rates for 20%, 40% and 45%, all the rates and bands are set by Holyrood. The signs from ministers here as they want to increase taxation in order to protect, as they would see it, public spending. That's going to be a very tough decision for two reasons. One, it's tough explaining to people they're going to have to pay more. Two, there's going to be a political battle, a huge political battle in Scotland. The left saying tax and spend, and the Conservatives saying match the Chancellor's objectives as set out today. One big fight ahead.
Ryan Taylor, thank you very much for that. Now, the rest of today's news. A school in Edinburgh, which is facing staff shortages, is to use university students to help in classes. You may recall Trinity Academy asked parents to help while it tried to recruit 2 new maths teachers. Well, while the shortage continues, undergraduate maths students will be assisting pupils alongside non-maths teachers in some maths lessons. Our education correspondent Jamie McIver is at the school. Jamie, is this a representation of a national problem?
Well, indeed, Jackie, ultimately what this story is about the problems a number of councils have told us about recruiting science, maths and technology students. Now, as you say, here at Trinity, we've done the story before. A couple of months ago, we told you about the problems that we're having filling a couple of vacancies in the maths department. Well, since then, the deadline has passed. There were no suitable applicants for the 2 jobs. So what's been happening is that some second-year students and some fifth-year students who are doing National 5 maths, but not higher maths, are being taught in classes where the teacher is not a maths teacher. Now, what's going to be happening now is that from next week on, some university maths students are going to be going into the school to offer additional help and support, though I should stress they're not actually going to be in charge of the class or leading the lesson. Now, the workaround solution here, it's got the backing of the parent council at the school, but of course it's never ideal if a workaround solution should go on for any length of time. The ideal solution here would be if they found 2 new maths teachers. There's a new deadline, it's next Monday, and here they'll certainly be hoping that this time round there are suitable applicants for the 2 jobs.
Broadly, Jamie, what's at the heart of this problem?
Ultimately, it's really about ensuring that teachers remain within the profession and that enough people go into teacher training to begin with. The number of places in teacher training has been increasing, but many of those places are not being filled. When it comes to maths teachers, only about half the target number for trainee teachers has been met this year. When it comes to science, maths and technology graduates, of course, they can have many career options, so there is the question of how to ensure teaching is an attractive career option for them. The Scottish Government is continuing to look at widening the ways into teaching for those who don't fancy the traditional option of a 1-year postgraduate course followed by a 1-year probationary year, and we should hear more news on that soon.
Thank you very much, Jamie McIver there. Police have released CCTV footage of a car and of a man they wish to speak to in connection with a murder which happened 7 years ago in Shotts. Anthony Wright was shot outside his home in June 2010. Officers say it was a targeted attack. They want anyone with information on the car or the man in the footage to contact them.
It's entirely possible that someone is currently has possession information that they may have had from the time, and they're just concerned about how they bring that forward to the police. They may not know how to do so. I would ask them to, I would appeal to their conscience to come forward. Mr Wright had a young family, 4 children, all of school age and below, and other loved ones who are still striving to understand why he met his death in this manner.
More than 10,000 people have signed a petition calling for a ban on electric dog training collars in Scotland. Already prohibited in Wales, but not in England or Northern Ireland, the Scottish Government plans to introduce controls on their use. But that's not going far enough for some dog lovers. Aileen Clark reports.
How about we take Bane and put him out on a place?
Meet Bane, 2 years old, already powerful, but a bit nervy.
Remember, when you've used a collar, I want you to say the word tap.
This trainer says this is the kind of situation where electronic collars are very useful to teach good behaviour, especially so for less fortunate dogs from difficult backgrounds.
So what the collar allows you to do is to be very gentle and use a blunt tapping sensation from the collar that can whisper, or it can match the adrenalised state of whatever the dog is going into. So say pulling an owner off their feet, or running on a road, or chasing another dog or something like that.
Well, this is one of the collars that's causing all this controversy, so can you make it work so I can feel it then?
Certainly, so I just want you to tell me when you feel any stimulus in your hand, okay?
Oh, I can feel it there. Yes, I can definitely feel it there.
Okay, so you're on a 15 right there, and the dog we're working today was a 4.
Right. Well, of course, there are some animal charities and certainly some dog owners who don't feel that these should be used whatever level they might be used at. A petition started by a Conservative MSP is growing in support for a complete ban on the collars in Scotland.
There's over 10,000 people who've supported my calls for a ban on electric shock collars. The SNP government need to listen to those people. They need to listen to Parliament, and I'll be pressing forward with a members' debate on this very subject.
An obedient dog can be achieved without the help of electronic collars, this trainer says. He would support a ban, and he works with many dogs not nearly as well behaved as this one.
The key is to figure out why a dog is behaving the way they are, the emotions driving that behaviour, their motivation, and to address those rather than in a lazy, superficial way slapping a collar on and pressing a button, hurting them, not dealing with the underlying reason.
These collars have already been banned in Wales. The Scottish Government believes regulating their use is a better approach.
What we want to do is bring in strict controls over their use to ensure that they can only be used in an appropriate manner. And in that way, we will, amongst other things, prevent dogs who have serious behavioural problems running the risk of being euthanised.
Details of the Scottish Government's plans for tighter control should come next year. Aileen Clark, reporting Scotland.
The number of people waiting longer than 12 weeks for a hospital outpatient appointment rose sharply in the last year. So now an initiative that hopes to cut the queues and benefit more urgent cases is to be rolled out across the country. Here's our health and social care correspondent, Shelley Joffrey.
A trip to hospital on a wet winter's morning, hard if you're in pain. Glasgow Royal Infirmary has been piloting a scheme to cut the number of fracture patients who need to come in.
What we found was that patients were delighted with this type of service. They can be at home or even potentially be at work with their injury, answering the phone, getting advice over the phone about how to self-care with their injury, and that advice over the phone will be supplemented with written information that they'll either get by post or potentially by email.
So patients are often talked through x-rays on the phone instead of in person.
We didn't have to travel in, it was just a matter of phone call, 10 minutes on the phone, everything was sorted. It saved you travelling in and having to sit and wait in a waiting room. Didn't have to do that at all.
The Health Secretary, under pressure to cut waiting times, has pledged an extra £4 million for other hospitals to follow suit.
This initiative is absolutely about reducing waiting times. Now, some of that's going to take time. The practice we've seen today in the GRI, there is similar practice in pockets throughout Scotland. What we need to do, though, is to make that the norm. This needs to be the way we do things.
Waiting times have gone into reverse recently. Across Scotland, nearly 60,000 people have waited more than 12 weeks for a new outpatient appointment. It's hoped that new ways of working like this will start to take the pressure off. Shelley Joffrey reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Sport now, and the Celtic players and 4,000 optimistic fans are in Paris for a Champions League match few expect them to win. They're up against PSG, a team who've yet to lose a goal in the competition. The Celtic manager says his team could play their best and still suffer a heavy defeat. Here's our senior football reporter, Chris McLaughlin.
To the city of love and romance, tourists flock in their thousands. There's passion, proposals and dreams come true. Others, though, are here with hopes and dreams of a very different kind.
You always dream, don't you? You always dream. You go to bed at night and you think, oh, wouldn't it be fantastic if we came away with a 1-0 or a 2-0. But possibility's always there. That's the great thing about football.
Can you dare to dream of a victory?
Always dream, I guess, but don't really see it happening tonight, I don't think.
I just hope we keep a bit of dignity. I'd say maybe if we get about a 3-1, 2-1 Paris, I'd be happy with that.
I'd be happy with that as well, to be fair. 3-1.
Watching the multi-million-pound stars of PSG train, it's little wonder the travelling fans are nervous. Neymar, Cavani and co are unbeaten in this campaign, scored 17, conceded none.
We're playing against a team that is arguably the best of the best.
which is a huge challenge for every team that they come across, not just ourselves. You know, we've seen it here with Bayern Munich coming here and losing. So it's a tough ask.
It's a huge challenge, one that we're going to enjoy facing. We've worked very hard to get ourselves in this position, but we want to go out there and give a good account of ourselves. If we can do that, then we'll take what comes after that.
This is Celtic's last Champions League trip away from home of this campaign, and it's most certainly their toughest. PSG and Bayern Munich have already qualified from Group B, but Celtic are looking good for that Europa League place in third spot. But here in the city of romance, oh how they would love to upset the odds and grab some points. Smile, focus, and you just never know. Chris McLaughlin, reporting Scotland, Paris.
Well, from romance to a bit of a stushy in rugby, ahead of Scotland's final autumn test on Saturday, their Australian opponents have complained about their training pitch. One of their players described the artificial surface at Edinburgh's Perfect Mill as probably one of the poorest surfaces he's ever played on. Cerdyn Idzan can tell us more.
Wallabies amongst the trees and leaves. Australia weren't happy at having to train yesterday around the edges of a pitch that was waterlogged.
A few of their scrum sessions were actually done sort of behind the goals, so it just disrupted the preparation. It's a side that speaks so much about doing the same things every week that it just had them a little bit annoyed. As far as I'm aware, they still haven't got a venue for tomorrow, so they're just still trying to sort that out. But a distraction that they've caused a little bit of a stir over, I suppose.
As Scotland worked out indoors, the Scottish Rugby Union told the BBC numerous other options were given to Australia, and with more rain forecast, several solutions have been put to them for tomorrow's sessions. Others are openly wondering whether the Wallabies worried enough about contingency plans, given the capital climate.
You want to train well, and I think you've got to factor in weather. So we've not trained outside this week. We trained indoors the last two training sessions. We feel we've had a really good training session this week. I know the players have enjoyed being indoors.
So you're saying there's no great conspiracy?
He was more talkative when it came to his team changes, with 3 new players in the pack from the narrow defeat to the All Blacks last weekend: Bergen, Gilchrist and Wilson. In the backs, there's one further change, with a return to Scotland duty for Sean Maitland.
I haven't played Test match rugby since Six Nations. Obviously, I was injured for the summer, and I'm really excited to be involved. And obviously, Australia-Scotland games are very exciting.
It was tight too against New Zealand last weekend. In this final autumn test, Scotland will be hoping to take their chances. Cerdyn Idzan reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Now, you've heard the phrase life imitating art, but what about art imitating art? Well, when the National Galleries of Scotland saw a comedy sketch parodying their work, they decided to copy it. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean explains.
It was a running gag on a popular comedy show.
Nobody mates get a swatch at the ribbons. You need ribbons today now?
The ribbons will not be ready Tuesday, sweetheart.
But it also sparked an idea for the National Galleries of Scotland. What if they could take their best-known paintings out on tour?
That is actually where the idea came from. One of our colleagues saw a sketch on television and thought, wow, we could try and do this. And we've put in an enormous amount of planning and we've achieved it. Today we've brought the painting out to people instead of expecting people coming to see it in the gallery.
And what else to take but Monarch of the Glen, the iconic Victorian painting which was the focus of a £4 million fundraising campaign earlier this year. One of the conditions for public money was that the painting be toured as widely as possible. It's currently visiting Scottish galleries and museums, and today, between Inverness and Perth, it stopped off in Aberfeldy. The regular art removal truck transformed into a temporary gallery, complete with attendants, and specially designed travelling frame offering today's visitors a rare chance to see the painting up close.
Oh, it was amazing. I had no idea until we got into the moving art gallery, and it was just so cool to be up close to it.
I thought it was just amazing in all the colours and the detail.
You got to see it much closer up than you would ever get to see it in a gallery, which was better than I thought it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed opinions on it, but it's a really amazing painting and it's huge as well.
but it was really good to see it.
So after its brief stop off this morning, the painting is now back on its tour of conventional art galleries. It's off to Perth, but it's hoped that in the future there could be more events like this to give the public the chance to get up close and personal with the monarch of the Glen. Pauline McLean reporting, Scotland, Aberfeldy.
Well, there may well be a few snowy Highland scenes coming up. Let's get the weather now from Christopher.
Jackie, thank you. Hello there. Yes, some wintry weather to come for some of us over the next 12 to 18 hours. The Met Office yellow be aware warning through parts of Highland and Grampian. At the moment, reasonably dry, but watch what happens the next couple of hours, turning wet with rain pushing up from the south. And through the early hours, that rain falling as snow through parts of the northeast and the northwest. But for many of us, a wet night, but wet with rain. And it will be a cold night, temperatures down close to freezing, if not lower. So a pretty cold, wet, and for some increasingly wintry night. And we have that yellow warning, which is still with us first thing tomorrow morning. So through parts of Caithness and Sutherland, towards Inverness Shire, through parts of Murray, northern Aberdeenshire, perhaps in towards Highland Perthshire, some snowfall, even to low levels. So you can see the roads have highlighted there. Those could well be affected at times. But not exclusively those roads. So certainly across the north and northeast tomorrow morning, wintry. Let's run that sequence again, but look at Scotland as a whole. And you can see the wintry weather across the north and northeast. Elsewhere, showery rain. And any snow you're seeing on the chart there really is over the hills and high ground. So we're not expecting snow through the central belt or the south or anything like that. By mid-afternoon, well, most of the snow's gone. It's quite showery. There'll be some sunshine, certainly across eastern parts of the country, but further west, rain showers, quite heavy at times, perhaps the odd rumble of thunder in the mix as well. And a cold feel to the afternoon, 6 or 7 Celsius at best, but many areas will be colder than that, particularly if there's snow on the ground. Further north, and the winds will be whipping through from the west-northwest, giving a cold feel, certainly around northern coast and across Orkney and Shetland. And those windy, showery conditions continue as we go through towards this time tomorrow night. Showers piling in across many central and western areas, further east dry, clear and cold. Looking ahead towards Friday, well, still a cold west-northwesterly wind driving in showers. And again, these wintry across the Highlands and Islands, perhaps in towards Argyll and across the southern uplands. But towns and cities, any wet weather will be of rain, perhaps a bit of sleet in the mix, but generally wet and once again cold. And those northwesterlies still with us as we go through towards the weekend, feeding in showers, sunniest across central and eastern parts, and certainly tomorrow morning for some wintry. That's the forecast.
Thank you, Christopher. Now, just one headline for you tonight. There's a row over how much money is coming to Scotland as a result of the budget. The Chancellor's announcement of £2 billion here was dismissed as smoke and mirrors by the First Minister. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'm back with the headlines at 8 and our late bulletin at 10:25. Until then, from all the team, good evening.